Hello everyone. Welcome back to Reddit Night, your favorite Reddit reading channel. Today we are back on our /Askreddit with some scary facts that you never heard about. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Serious, hello scientists of Reddit, what's a scary science fact that the public knows nothing about? In 1958, a 7,600 pounds nuclear bomb was lost off the Georgia coast near Savannah. It's never been found. There is a gravitational anomaly in space called the Great Attractor, which is pulling everything within the Virgo and Hydra Centaurus superclusters towards it. It lies 150 to 250 million light-years from the Milky Way, which itself is being pulled towards it too. The scary part is that relative to us, this anomaly lies within the same plane as our own galaxy, making it very difficult to observe. Essentially, we have almost no concrete idea of what it is. I've got 3 for you. 1. Rabies. Once symptomatic, rabies has a 100% fatality rate. The only options are the rabies vaccine and immunoglobulin therapy, which, again, must be administered before any symptoms. 2. Gamma ray bursts, henceforth referred to as GRBs. GRBs are a rare phenomenon emitted from the poles of rapidly spinning supernovae and hypernovae. In the event of a direct hit from suitably close, which is actually really far, all life on Earth would be wiped out. The facing side would be annihilated instantly, while the trailing side would quickly die due to the conditions on Earth no longer being suitable to support life. And there is absolutely nothing we can do about it. 3. Runaway global warming. There are many stores of greenhouse gases, namely carbon dioxide and methane, all over the place. But the conditions required to keep these gases trapped are delicate. The worst part? It may already be too late to stop, even if humanity immediately ceased all greenhouse gas emissions and put every single resource we have into carbon sequestration. If your dog swims in a lake after receiving a spot-on flea treatment, it absolutely decimates the invertebrate population. A large dog swimming in 8 Olympic swimming pools worth of water soon after treatment will leach enough neurotoxin to kill 50% of the lake's invertebrate population within 48 hours. There's some awareness of this, but it's not being taken seriously enough. Edit, I need to add, when I say after I mean relatively soon after, within say a day, to have an effect quite this devastating. The leaching does reduce over the month, but it's still there, and the effect of multiple dogs still allows for a terrible buildup of chemicals. Scientific literature conclusion on Alzheimer's disease and other neurodegenerative diseases in general is that the diseases start decades before the first obvious symptoms and that we need to treat them at this stage. When you exhibit obvious symptoms, it's too late, your brain is already mush. If you get diagnosed with Alzheimer's at 65, you had the disease since your early 40s at least. And you experienced very mild symptoms but didn't notice it. And your brain fought like hell to compensate the deficit. When you get diagnosed, your brain is already very severely damaged and will never recover from the deficit. Most of the faults that are capable of causing large earthquakes have never been mapped. The entire explosive output from Little Boy, the nuclear bomb dropped on Hiroshima, came from just over half a gram of matter being converted into energy. The mass of a butterfly exploding with the force of 15,000 tons of TNT. Anthrax can sporulate in dirt and stay viable for hundreds of years until the soil is disturbed and the spores inhaled. In the UK, about 17% of people have fetal alcohol syndrome, Maguire et al., 1992. As much as 17% of us are developmentally disabled simply because, prior to the late 90s, a large proportion of British mothers drank during pregnancy, 41%. Thankfully, the prevalence rate has been falling fast since the late 90s when all this research was published, but it's terrifying to see how much of an effect FOST is having on society. Hearing is supposedly one of the last senses to fade upon death based on EEG, brainwave recordings. Haven't seen this one yet, insects are going extinct. We have lost a significant chunk just since the 80s. I think it was around 20%. Mozzies are going up, because of course, but just about everything else is going. Wasn't until I read this that I realized that as a kid in the 90s I used to see butterflies all the time. Dragonflies. My house used to get invaded by Christmas beetles every year. Not so much. These days I might see only 1 or 2 Christmas beetles in December, if any at all. When I was a kid I remember finding 8 in my house in a single night. Same house. Small asteroids are hard to detect, but can still cause massive damage to towns. The Cascadia Subduction Zone, CSZ, runs off the coast of Northern California to southern Canada and ruptures about every 250 to 350 years. We know this from the geologic record. The last rupture was in January 1700, and there are written records from Japan of a tsunami that resulted from the earthquake on the other side of the Pacific. This zone is still active and is likely to rupture in the next 100 years, resulting in a Mag 9+ earthquake that impacts the west coast from northern Cali to southern Canada. Edit: these massive earthquakes along subduction zones are called megathrust earthquakes. Prions. Misfolded proteins that cause a cascade of protein misfoldings that lead to amyloid plaque buildups, resulting in uncontrollable neurodegeneration that is fatal in 100% of cases within 2 years. There is no cure. We don't understand what causes it. We don't understand the mechanism of the misfolding cascade. We don't even fully understand the structure of the misfolded proteins. It could in theory happen to anyone, at any time, and there's no way to tell until you start showing symptoms, at which point you might have 18 months to live, if you're lucky, the last 6 of which will be intensely unpleasant. Some forms of anesthesia don't numb you to pain, they make you forget that you felt it. I don't know if I'd call it science purse or call myself a scientist lol, but I'm a former funeral director, and one of the first things you learn in your actual funeral sciences classes is that people over a certain body fat percentage will start a literal grease fire in your crematory oven if you don't bake them at the proper temp and duration. Cold start, low and slow is key. Here's a few scary medical science facts regarding CPR that you won't often hear in your first aid/CPR class put on in school. I only learned this stuff after schooling to become an EMT. What's the success rate of CPR? The average person assumes 75% or greater. In reality, it's barely 10%. It's one of the first things they told us in training, because all new people have way too high of an expectation to the effectiveness of CPR. It can be very depressing when you're doing everything you were trained, and aren't getting the results you think you should be getting. The time from collapse to administration of a shock via AED is absolutely paramount. They say the chances of survival drop 10% per minute. Oh, and rescue breaths. If you're not being very, and I mean very careful, you'll cause gastric dissension. You'll literally be blowing up their stomach, and they will vomit. Then there's the cracks and crackles. If done right, it'll sound and feel like you're breaking every rib in little old lady Nelson's chest. You're likely not, it's cartilage and other bits shifting. Although, if you're a bit too vigorous, you may very well break a rib or two. But hey, they're already dead. So it doesn't matter. They'd rather be alive with a broken rib, than dead. There were once sea scorpions the size of a great white shark. Soil science adjacent researcher here. We are degrading, polluting, and losing our topsoil at such a rate that we may not be able to produce enough food to feed everyone within 50 to 60 years, let alone what impacts climate change may bring to bear on our food supply. And the US government's crop insurance programs and incentives all reinforce the bad practices, while discouraging regenerative practices. These bad policies are extremely hard to change because of lobbying from the major agribusiness companies, who make money off of these short-sighted policies. Our food supply is further threatened by our agricultural overdependence on aquifer water, which is not being replenished, making it an unsustainable source of water. If the aquifers are overdrawn, depleted, or polluted, we hit a hard wall of water scarcity, and we will have no backups to address the problem with. The drawdown of the aquifers also causes land subsidence, which causes costly infrastructure and building damage. The general public does not realize the impending crisis that will be caused by the confluence of these factors. We keep our dangerous bacteria species in a college campus fridge, protected by one single lock, with one power cord. If you live in the Netherlands and your house is older than let's say 100 years and you have not renovated your plumbing, chances are fairly high that you can get lead poisoning. It is impossible for water treatment companies to pinpoint where they are and how many, and many building plans do not include the plumbing schematics. So check your pipes for lead, they can do harm, especially to children. There's a solar event known as a CME, or a coronal mass ejection. It occurs very frequently on a cosmic timescale. Every few decades to centuries there's a decent sized one. Why are they scary? A CME is a massive burst of radiation, easily able to fully envelope the Earth in its path, and it's the equivalent of a non-stop EMP barrage. The last time a big one hit Earth was when we had telegraph lines for communications, and they spontaneously caught fire. In today's world, with everything running on electricity, when the next big one hits we'll have at most a few days warning, and it'd be a literal apocalypse movie scenario, With planes going down due to their whole electrical system frying, nobody's vehicle starting, untold billions in fire damage would wreak havoc everywhere, and the machines we depend on to help would be similarly fried. Soon stuff would be unaffected, being parked in deep, concrete roofed parking garages and the like, but our entire infrastructure would be useless for years. It'd literally send us into a mini dark age while people tried to get things working again. Recovery would take decades to centuries. Antibiotics has been abused and misused for so long that various bacteria strains have started to get resistance to them. What used to be a treatable infection might soon become deadly because we are unable to treat it with the antibiotics we have today. There is research to try and find other ways to treat antibiotic-resistant bacteria, but until then, please use prescribed antibiotics until they are finished, not until you feel better. If unsuited, do not flush them down the toilet or put them in the bin. Give it to a pharmacy so they can discard them correctly, and use antibiotics when necessary. Some countries give them willy-nilly while others are more conservative. Humans rely on evaporating sweat to stay cool. If humidity gets too high, relatively low heat can kill humans. The equivalent of 95 degrees Fahrenheit / 35 degrees Celsius at 100% relative humidity can kill even healthy humans. This is called a wet bulb event. By 2050, scientists predict multiple wet bulb events in the North China Plain. Approximately 400 million people live in the North China Plain. Helium. Fun for party balloons. Everybody likes a squeaky voice. Except helium is a vital component of various high-tech devices such as MRIs. Helium is also light enough that the Earth's gravity cannot contain it. And we are running out. Not today, not tomorrow, but we are frivolously wasting it when we should be jealously hoarding it, and eventually we won't have any left, and a lot of our wonderful technology will suddenly stop working. The human genome is riddled with mutations. Some were passed down from your parents, some occurred during DNA replication and others as a result of DNA damage from the environment, smoking, UV light, etc. Most of these mutations are harmless, some will be repaired, some won't. But others will be in cancer suppressor genes or oncogenes. In fact, you may have cancerous cells growing in your body right now. That's it for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.